I still remember the exact moment I realized my marriage was over. It wasn't when I found a text message or heard a confession. It was when my wife looked me in the eyes at my mother's birthday dinner, smiled for everyone else, and quietly whispered to me, "Please don't tell them yet. I want tonight to be happy." In that instant, I understood that the person I had trusted most had already moved on, while I was still trying to save something that no longer existed. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 34 years old, and until 3 years ago, I thought love was simply about staying no matter what. I believed that if two people promised forever, they would eventually find their way back to each other. I was wrong, but not in the way I expected. I met my wife, Emily, when we were both working at a small bookstore in Portland. I was finishing graduate school, and she was saving money to become a graphic designer. We weren't the kind of couple who fell in love overnight. It happened slowly. We'd spend our lunch breaks talking about books we'd never actually finished, laughing about customers who insisted every novel had a movie adaptation, and competing to see who could make the better cup of coffee in the tiny employee kitchen. One rainy evening, after closing the store, the city lost power. Instead of going home, we sat by the front window watching people hurry through the rain, while the emergency lights cast soft shadows across the shelves. She looked at me and said, "You know, this is the happiest I've been all week." I smiled. "We're sitting in a dark bookstore." "I know." "That's your idea of exciting?" She laughed. "No, you're my idea of exciting. That was the moment I fell in love." Over the next few years, we built a simple life together. We rented a tiny apartment that always seemed one paycheck away from disaster. We argued over whose turn it was to wash dishes. We celebrated promotions with takeout instead of fancy restaurants. Looking back, those ordinary days became the ones I missed the most. When I proposed, she cried before I even opened the ring box. "I thought you dropped something," she joked through tears. I almost did. She said yes before I finished asking. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. About 60 family members and friends gathered in a small garden. My father danced so enthusiastically that he nearly fell into the cake table. Emily laughed so hard she couldn't catch her breath. It felt perfect because it was ours. The first few years of marriage were busy but happy. We both worked long hours. We saved for a house. We talked about having children someday. Then life started changing in small ways that didn't seem important at first. Emily accepted a new job with a growing design company. She was excited, and I was proud of her. She finally felt like her talent was being recognized. She started coming home, later, not every night. Just often enough that dinner became unpredictable. I had another meeting. She'd say, "I understand." And I really did. Success takes time. Dreams require sacrifice. I kept telling myself that. Then our conversations became shorter. Instead of telling each other everything about our day, we'd exchange a few sentences before one of us opened a laptop. One evening, I suggested we take a weekend trip. She hesitated. "I don't know if I can." "Because of work?" "Yeah, every weekend." She looked down at her coffee. "It's just a busy season." I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. Months passed. One Saturday morning, I woke up before sunrise and found her sitting alone on the balcony. She looked exhausted. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" She shrugged. "Life." I sat beside her. "We haven't really talked lately. I know. I miss you." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Miss us too." That sentence gave me hope. I thought we were finally going to fix whatever had been quietly drifting between us. Instead, things became even more distant. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't angry, she was simply somewhere else emotionally. One evening I made her favorite dinner, pasta with homemade sauce, candles, music playing softly. She walked through the door, smiled politely, and said, "I'm sorry. I already ate with my team." I tried not to let my disappointment show. "Oh, I forgot to text." "It's okay." It wasn't, but I wasn't ready to admit that. About 2 months later, my mother invited the whole family over for her birthday. Everyone was there, my parents, my younger sister, my niece's Aunt Emily. Seemed cheerful all evening. She laughed with my mom, helped serve dessert, took family photos, watching her. I convinced myself I'd imagined the distance between us. Then she quietly asked if we could step into the hallway. She took a deep breath. I'm not happy anymore. I felt like the floor disappeared. Beneath me, what do you mean? I've been trying. We both have. She slowly shook her head. I don't think I have. Before I could respond, everyone in the dining room started singing Happy Birthday. Emily looked toward the laughter, then back at me. Please don't tell them yet. Tell them what? That I think our marriage is over. She gently touched my hand. I want tonight to be happy. That was the longest birthday dinner of my life. I smiled in every family photo. I laughed at every joke. Inside, I felt completely numb. When we got home, we talked until almost 3 a.m. There wasn't another person. There wasn't some dramatic betrayal. She simply admitted she'd spent so much time building her career that she'd lost sight of who she was, and somewhere along the way, she'd stopped feeling like my partner. I don't want to lie to you anymore, she said quietly. I still care about you, but I'm not in love the way I used to be. I wanted to argue, to promise we'd go to counseling, to suggest vacations, date nights, anything. Instead, I asked one question. When did you first know? She looked at the floor. A long time ago. That hurt more than hearing the words themselves. Because while I was trying to save our marriage, she'd already been grieving it. We did try. Counseling for months. Sometimes we'd leave a session feeling hopeful. Other times we'd drive home in complete silence. Our counselor finally said, something that changed my perspective, love, can survive many things, she said. But it can't survive if only one person is trying to rebuild it. I didn't want to hear that, but I needed to. 6 months later, we signed the divorce papers. People kept asking whose fault it was. The truth disappointed them. Sometimes there isn't a villain. Sometimes two decent people slowly become strangers while living under the same roof. The hardest part wasn't moving out. It wasn't dividing furniture. Wasn't changing my address. It was learning who I was without the future I'd imagined. For a while, I avoided restaurants we'd loved, songs we'd danced to, even the bookstore where we first met. Everything felt connected to a version of my life that no longer existed. One Saturday morning, almost a year later, I found myself walking past that old bookstore. It was under new ownership, different shelves, different colors. But the window where we'd once sat during that blackout was still there. I walked inside. The young cashier smiled. Anyway, I help you find anything? I looked around. I think I already found it. She looked confused. I laughed. Sorry, just an old memory. As I turned to leave, I noticed a small display with a handwritten sign. Every ending leaves room for a new beginning. It sounded simple, maybe even cliché. But for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Healing wasn't quick. There were lonely birthdays, quiet holidays, moments when I wondered if I'd ever trust someone again. Then, little by little, I stopped measuring my life by what I'd lost. I started noticing what I'd gained, closer. Friendships, more time with family, a deeper understanding of myself. Eventually, I met someone new, not because I was searching desperately, but because I was finally happy enough on my own that love became something to share instead of something to complete me. The biggest lesson my marriage taught me wasn't about heartbreak. It was about honesty. The truth may hurt in the moment, but silence often hurts far longer. If someone you love is struggling, talk before the distance becomes too wide. If you're hurting, don't pretend everything is fine just to avoid one difficult conversation. And if life forces you to start over, remember this. Starting over isn't the same as starting from nothing. You carry every lesson, every memory, every ounce of strength you've earned along the way. Those things become the foundation of whatever comes next. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know what you think. Did this story touch your heart? Let me know in the comments below. Also, tell me where you're watching from. Which country and city are you in? I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel around the world. If you enjoy emotional relationship and life stories like this, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us bring you more heartfelt stories every week. See you in the next story.